Yeah, I don't know how this worked out this way, but it did. So I'm basically going to talk about building worlds from scratch. But what I'd really like this to be is kind of I don't want it to come across too preachy, but this is kind of my reflections of where we're at today and where we can go and the components of the past that need to be kind of addressed. This is me, if you want to send me a LinkedIn or whatever, and some of my background. Like I mentioned, I'm old, so I was there for the first revolution, which was the internet in New York, and now I'm hopefully at the second one. While at Pixar, like I mentioned before, I led Previs there on a lot of the films, which is, if you don't know what Previs is, it's the early development part of the process where we're trying to figure out what goes into the film. So a lot of my background is in set design and working with the story department. So here's an example. Hopefully I'm not going to get in trouble for this. There's a couple things that are important to remember that I've learned over my time, and that's that my old boss used to say that the worlds are characters in and of themselves. They're not just backdrops. How they fit in the frame, how the characters interact with them is very important. And just 3 quick examples here is our characters need to move around in the space, obviously, to tell the story. The other thing is there's very important places in sets that are important to the characters' developments along the course of the movie, and then that's just kind of finished up in that 3rd frame there, which is they have to have some kind of permanence. You have to be able to come back to them and have them not changing, which is a very frustrating part of the process right now. I mean, you probably all realize this, your backgrounds move around all the time. That's why I say the history is preserved. It's also important because I think I mentioned in the panel that where the movie's actually made is in editorial. And that's where all the material that the art department makes, the layout department makes, the animation department makes, hits the story and the director. And they have to make decisions that sometimes will destroy or deconstruct things that have already gone on before. So it's important to have some kind of history across a set or a world. This is another example of another challenging thing with AI right now that is easy in production. So on the left here, you'll see a standard kind of Previs frame for the Incredibles house. And this kind of rudimentary kind of blocking in 3D, you'll see a themes forming here, is very useful. We used to rely on storyboards, but storyboards made production very expensive because if you had 6 different storyboard artists, you'd have 6 different versions of that house. When we introduced 3D into the pipeline, everything started to lock down, and there was a consistency that we could rely on going into production. The other thing is you can take it further is, I don't know if you guys know this, but that middle frame is, they actually built the Incredibles house from Incredibles 2. And they used our model to build it. I don't know what they would have done if this was a 2D frame from AI, because there would have been no way to deconstruct it, or you would have had to essentially start over. And then, of course, again, the continuity story is that location can be used in multiple parts of the film and can be altered if editorial decides to. Okay, I'm just trying to be funny here, but you guys have all heard this, that film is dead, Hollywood is dead. I don't think people understand what goes into it. It's really not the case. Artists are always going to be at the center of this process. The AIs will become more like assistants, I think. And this is 3 of the reasons why I think that is. Again, 3D is coming back. No spatial coherence in AI. Every frame I make, every shot I make, I'm lucky if it's the same or if it has relation to this shot before it. I know there's ways to do very complex JSON prompting. If you really want to get into that, you can, but it's not the most efficient way to do it. There's no rules or memory, okay? I love this statement. Each generation is largely stateless. It only knows about itself. It doesn't know about anything on either side of it. That is getting a little better with things like image reference and some of the other tools that are coming online, but ultimately, each of the worlds that you create in an AI frame is in and of itself its own thing. And then this is my favorite one, the spaghetti pipelines. I have seen amazing stuff from Comfy and Weavy. It reminds me of Houdini, right? They are great, but we're taking one fragmented workflow and replacing it with another fragmented workflow, right? And I think there's a real promise that we can combine those together if we can find a way to put the tools in place to take advantage of all the stuff that AI can do. Okay. So this is kind of the way I see the landscape right now from my background, which is you have these great tools that are now doing image to 3D, so we're not modeling anymore, which is great. Speeds up the process. You can argue how valuable those models are. You're not going to make a transformer with one of those, but maybe someday. And then kind of in the middle sits what I call the layout tools, which we're all kind of familiar with: Unreal, Maya, Blender, and SketchUp. And then on the far right is kind of the stuff that has been forming last year and is going to be really big, in my opinion, this year, which is the G-Splat world. But the thing about the G-Splat world is that right now it's not segmentable. So it's just a big like cloud of what we're seeing in this room. And if I need to move something, I can't move it. I have to move it and then redo the G-Splat. So combining these two on the left is kind of where I think the sweet spot of where we can go with AI is going to be. And it's probably my bias because that center one is the traditional workflow, right? It's scene assembly in 3D. So echoing on that, this is what is working great today. I actually use a lot of this stuff today in my pipeline. So, you know, you can prototype amazing things from images. You can bring those into your modeling environment and get a consistent world. And then there's these nice things that are happening. That's a G-Splat on the right that you can then transfer to that and have an export pipeline, right? But they're all still very early in their development, and they're kind of clunky to work with. But they still are starting to give us some control back of the world that we're creating and helping the model understand what it needs to create for us. All right, so here's what we need tomorrow. This is my favorite one. Okay, persistence of editing, we all know about that, right? Shot-to-shot consistency, characters not changing over time. Spatial reasoning is a big one that's coming on. Sam3D did a lot of great work there. Google's doing a lot of great work there. Essentially what it is, and these last two frames are actually from our tool, you need to be able to deconstruct an environment from an image. That is a very powerful thing to do, as opposed to building it manually, or prompt into it, right? So I can prompt into that living room, and you can kind of see that the generation is kind of faded in there. The other thing too, though, and we're getting there in that middle one. The place where we still have a lot of work to do is in the scalable coherence, right, of large worlds, large models. I'm sure you guys have all seen those amazing like sci-fi scenes where people are flying through like 1.5 miles at a time. That's great. It's beautiful for one shot. I can tell you what the director's going to say. I want to do the camera go in the other direction. You're going to get a completely different city, a completely different world, right? So, again, all of this kind of anchors on 3D in a little bit of a way. And then this is I think this is my last frame. So, where's the state of art today? I feel like for me as an artist in my traditional workflow is now starting to blend into the AI workflows. So I feel like there is hope here. But you still need these components, which are kind of the heart of the thing, like telling emotional stories that come from humans and not some averaged idea of a prompt. And then also there's really great innovative things. I could not have made that middle frame 3 months ago. That is a completely original object that the models know nothing about. But because I had that model and I had that image reference and I had that idea, I was able to do that, which it really impresses me. But there's another thing that I don't know that we've talked a lot about at this conference, which is there is also a physical component to a lot of production work. When you do events or when you're planning for things, or if like the house from Incredibles, if you want to make that for real, you do need some kind of spatial understanding of the world to be able to back out of that and go into other modes of distribution, to answer your question, right? It can't just be stuck in this 2D world. And that's it. All right, five minutes for questions.
Can you talk about your tool?
Yeah, no, I'd like to. It's not a shameless pitch. So I didn't touch AI until I left Pixar, mostly because we were forbidden to by the legal department. But also my first foray into it was maybe 2.5 years ago, and I had the same experience everybody else does, which it was just pulling the lever and getting slop after slop. You'd be lucky if you got some reference out of it, but I think in the last 2 years it's really grown. And so one of the things that the company that I work for called Intangible AI is we are trying to make, I know everybody says this, we're trying to make an artist-centric tool that works in the workflows that we're all used to coming from. And the way we do that is we start with a backbone of 3D. So if you go to our tool, you'll see you go and either prompt for a 3D environment or create a 3D environment from the assets that we've provided you, but you can also import your own assets and export your own assets. But the most important problem we were trying to solve, at least initially, was the compositional problem. So you have a camera in there, and you can use the camera to frame your objects, frame your composition, and then we use that data to actually write the prompt for you. So you don't have to write that for the generator. The other thing it does is it hems in the models and doesn't let them just go wild crazy on whatever the frame's going to be, because you have an opinion about the shot you want to see. You have an opinion about the composition, and especially going shot to shot if you're trying to tell a story. You're going close up, you're going wide, you're doing this. You want this object in frame. You want the mountain just over their head. You want to get rid of tangents that are weird. So our tool allows you to do that right now, and it's actually working really well in that way. So the next shoe to drop for us is what we've done for compositional control over a 2D still frame. And you can go image to movie video like everybody does today. But my next big thing, the next big hill I'm trying to die on, is I want compositional control over time. That's what animation is. And if you guys, I'm sure you're all paying attention to all the posts and everything. You're starting to see this. You're starting to see people use Blender and full rendered animations, and then using video to video transfer to then transfer that start frame that is beautiful the way they like it, but use all the animation that's coming from Blender. And so right now, that's the thing that we're building into the tool right now that I'm super excited about, because it'll be full camera control, full animation control. And then I'll just wrap up by saying, we're not trying to redo Blender, Maya, Unreal, or Houdini. I'm done learning those tools. I want to make compositional control accessible to everybody. So one of the main things we're doing is we're carving off that top 10% that I've only used over the last 25 years to do every previs I've ever done. Just those basic tools of putting objects in the set, shooting the objects, framing up your camera, just really simple previs. And then the wonderful thing is the AI is doing the heavy work of the UVs, the sim, the lighting, right? And we even introduced lighting, so you have lighting now too. So I joke, last thing I'll say, I joke with my boss that if we don't work out, can I have a copy of Intangible? Because I don't want to go back to Maya, I don't want to go back to Blender, and I don't want to go back to Houdini. So that's it. And we're out of time, but anybody got one more? Let's do one more, if anyone's got one.
I have a question.
Yes?
Can't see me back here. How are you reconciling with the VFX community? So something like this, offering my access to things like Maya, Blender, whatever, is going to really, compartmentalize creators from other creators. There's this idea that if I've learned it, you have no right to understand how to use it. So in your creation, is your target audience more people who not function in the VFX circuit? Or are you trying to basically attract both, where if you have the skill, it'll be a stronger tool, and if you don't have the skill, you'll learn the skill?
We're trying to attract both, because all up and down the vertical scale of creation, from the director all the way down to the PA, they need to have an understanding of how we got where we're going and be able to interact at every piece along the way. The pro users like I am will probably stick to their pipelines for quite a while, because they like the control that they'll find there, and I think there's a place for that. But I want to expand the space of availability to other people to have their creative ideas come out. Because I have worked my whole career with amazing illustrators. I can't illustrate, but 3D was an unlock for me to get my ideas out. And so what I'd like to see happen is, if we can get this right, is to leverage what's happening, the amazing stuff that's happening in AI, and give more people the control over it, if that answers your question.
Yeah.
And in short, it's not going to surprise anybody here, I have lost friends because I'm in an AI company. Thank you, everybody.